Welcome, friends and fellow entrepreneurial teachers. Today, I am joined by a fellow entrepreneurial teacher, Angel Mary, who is a motivational leadership speaker and also the CEO of Trak Investments, LLC, which is a leadership development and strategic business consulting company. Angel Mary's background has spanned her career through various sectors, such as government, finance, food service, real estate, and healthcare. And she dove into business entrepreneurially in 2018, opening Trak Investments, where she helps companies bridge the gap between the people and the processes, which is something that we do a lot in our business as well. So love to hear more about those strategies. And motivated to share her success and challenges through her career, the teacher side of entrepreneurial teaching. Angel Mary also started the Career Path Angel Show, a podcast, which is full of tips and lessons for the next generation of young professionals as they navigate their own evolving career paths. So now, as someone who was raised on Star Trek: The Next Generation, I have to ask out of the gate, what's the inspiration behind the Trak Investments name?
I definitely did watch Star Trek: The Next Generation. I think that's the one that had Whoopi Goldberg in it. Was that the right one?
Yep.
Yes, that's the one I grew up watching too. And that was very addicting. Yes, there was a little bit of inspiration from that. And then also, I wanted to have star in the name because I feel that everybody is a star and everybody has an opportunity to shine. And leadership development and business coaching is an opportunity to give everybody that chance to be the star in their careers.
Awesome. All right. And then what brought you to today? So to whatever level you want to take us through it, what's your journey? How did you end up as an entrepreneur?
Well, I think I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit within, but I was never initially feeling confident enough to step out on my own. And I'm very thankful that all of the years really winding between multiple different sectors, giving me a bird's eye view and also a behind the curtain look at different sector fields such as government, finance, real estate, um, healthcare, even retail. I've gone into so many different fields that I have been able to understand what it's like to be in that area and understand what the struggles are for employees no matter where they're coming from. And I have been the employee under very poor leadership, and I have been a manager trying to change the culture in an organization where individuals were feeling low and demotivated. And for me personally, my greatest accomplishments has always been building that connection between individuals and pulling someone who's highly disengaged out of their minds or their worries or their fears and pulling them back into the team. And sometimes this is just a result of poor management that had happened previously and the feelings of just not feeling heard. That's what most employees who are disengaged feel. They're just not heard. And even myself, I've been in that position. So the reason why I moved into this position was because I myself recognized that there is so much opportunity to really support companies, entrepreneurs, leaders alike in building teams that are super cohesive, that can work in collaboration and get you to the bottom line that you want to reach in your profits, but also build a real culture where you feel like this is where I want to be and you're not losing amazing employees to other companies.
All right, that sparks multiple questions. One I almost always end up asking, you kind of alluded to it a little bit. The kind of the motivation to be entrepreneurial for most people that I've talked to, a lot of times it sparks from a younger age. Sometimes not though. Sometimes life circumstances just get you there. So who or what taught you to be entrepreneurial? Was it something that was just kind of always there, that kind of go-getter attitude, or was there an inspiration that happened at some point on your journey?
I would say that one of the most important keys to deciding whether or not you're ready to take that plunge into entrepreneurship is recognize whether or not you have that resourceful mindset that you need to be an entrepreneur. And that what I'm talking about here is, are you able to own, figure out, and solve problems? Now, you can have entrepreneurship within a company where you're following an entrepreneurial mindset path within the company, or you can have entrepreneurship mindset where you're going out on your own. Either way, when you're in a leadership position, you are often relying on yourself. And that's the mark of a leader, one that doesn't feel like they need to always go to other people to figure things out. Though I do recommend leaders who do that, because you want to be able to involve everyone around you to build them up so that you're not the only one solving all the problems by yourself. You want to keep everyone engaged. But the real key to knowing whether or not you're ready or right to go into entrepreneurship itself is really understanding whether or not are you going to sink if you hit a problem. Are you able to take that extra step to figure it out? Because we know as entrepreneurs, we're going to be coming across things that we don't know. And if you are not willing to take that extra step to learn, or to take that extra step to find someone to mentor you, or take that extra step to just simply figure it out yourself, just taking that initial feeling of, I don't know what to do, and converting that over into, okay, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to figure this out. And that is the mindset that you need as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And that's the reason that on this podcast and in the my work that I do with my partner through Momentum Learning Systems, we talk about entrepreneurial teachers for exactly that reason. My journey started in an entrepreneurial position, and then I had a strong leader that helped encourage me and create the space for me to continue to rise and come into my own as a leader, because like you said, you can end up in a position with a leader that's not as strong, and sometimes those leaders are trying to keep people down, unfortunately,
Yes.
because they're trying to protect their own, position of power or whatever happens to be. So the other question that came out from kind of your brief story of your journey to how you got here, ties into that of how did you learn to start recognizing culture and strong leadership? So I know for me, I had someone that kind of brought my attention to it. So, in the work that I was doing in the martial arts, becoming a martial arts instructor, there was this encouragement to study leadership and learn what strong leadership means. So was that something that, again, did someone inspire you, or was it like, was there a book that was like kind of that cathartic moment, or is it just something you just kind of noticed and been curious about your whole life?
So it's very interesting. You're unable to be a leader unless you're born a leader. I don't agree with that. I think that you absolutely can develop yourself into that leader that we are all talking about and thinking about. And when we think about great leaders, we might think about some famous people out there. We might think about Oprah Winfrey or Elon Musk or somebody who's really a titan in their industry. When I think about leadership and when I think about what a great leader is, it's the ability to be able to connect with another person. So I know for me personally, I had so many bosses over the years, and I got a really good look at what a great leader could be for somebody. The ones that really engaged me were the ones that took an interest in where I wanted to go and took an interest in trying to see if my skill sets needed to be improved in some way, and they would give me tips and support. But the other half of that is, are you able to take some type of feedback? Because, as you know, we're in Toastmasters together, and that is a challenge for some people, getting feedback. And to continually change and grow and learn, you have to be willing to take any information someone's willing to give you to help you move to the next level. And that is a block for a lot of people. So I'm going to tell you a little story about my recognition on, first of all, the skills that I had in knowing that I needed to jump out into entrepreneurship and building a leadership development programming and workshops for individuals, or building up some consulting options for people who are in their own businesses. But before I got to that point, I had to go through, just like you said, certain scenarios to recognize that. And one particular scenario that I remember was I was working, and I started out jumping around multiple industries. So I got to see every area and sector, and I realized quickly as I was moving along what sector would be good for me. And I'll tell you, I started out with I graduated with economics degree because back then I was just, I struggled with my family life in my youth, and my father was disabled, so my mother was the only breadwinner. I saw her as a role model in my household, as the main woman, pulling us together as a family, but everything was a struggle for us growing up. I did not have enough money to get a baseball mitt to go play baseball. Like, it was just everything was counting pennies. And I don't want to live like that. So when I went to college, I studied economics because I was like, I want to make a lot of money. I'm going to go into finance. And of course, that's not exactly the right way to do this, right? You can make a lot of money, but you want to go into something that fits your personality type, it fits your skill set. And the problem that happens in college is you don't really know what that stuff is until you're out there in the world actually doing it. So one of my first jobs out of college, I was working for the state of Florida. It was a government position, and I started in budgets, and then I moved into contracting, and that was a wonderful role. However, government is kind of a place where motivation dies because people move so slowly over there and things are just at snail's pace. So I was coming from New York and being in Florida, it was just far too slow for me. And even though I loved the work I was doing as a contract specialist, what I was actually doing in that role was I was literally, and this is back in the early 2000s, I was literally hand typing contracts, multi-million dollar contracts that were won by these huge behavioral health companies who are trying to get homeless shelter beds created or huge facilities created. So they would do these RFP bids to the government. They would win like $50 million or whatever. I would write up the contract by hand in Word, and then I would call up the CEO and be like, "Hi, Angela Mary, I have your contract ready and I have your check for $50 million. Can you come to my office and sign these?" And I was 22, 23 years old, and I was already rubbing shoulders with CEOs and individuals at these high positions. And that was eye-opening for me. I mean, it gave me a look into seeing that these are just regular people. They're just regular people. We often put people in these high positions as almost like gods, but they're just regular people with a title and they're just doing their job. So that helped me a lot in recognizing how to really engage with people at all different levels. When I left the government, I got into my dream job in New York City. This was like what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in a high rise in New York City, working in a financial company, wearing like my business suits. That was my dream. Like I think there were like all these TV shows in the 90s and these movies in the 90s of women like going and getting the bag, and like they were going to New York City and they're, all that stuff. And that was kind of like the dream for me. And I did it. But what happened? I was in gray cubicles in a complete boring floor filled with people who are just looking at numbers all day. You can tell talking to me right now that I'm an extremely extroverted personality, and my job was a data specialist. So all I was doing was just looking at numbers and not talking to anybody. And while I was making a lot of money, it wasn't at all fulfilling to me, and it didn't really utilize my skills at all. So that led me to realize that I needed to go back to the drawing board and figure out what I wanted to do. And around that time, I got pregnant with my first son and I gave birth. And then those years when my son was young and my second son was also born a few years later, I sort of took a break from being full time and I was reassessing where should I go. And I tried a couple of different things. I did real estate, which was great because I was able to learn a little bit about sales in that role. And then I did well, I'm a truckaholic, so I found this amazing online program. This was back in 2008. It was a École Chocolat School of Chocolatier online. It was one of the first online programs back then. And I was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with chocolate. I have to do this. So I did this whole program and I got my chocolatier certification. And I started doing party chocolates for, birthdays and baby showers. And I was living in Queens at the time, Queens, New York. And I was situated in this. First of all, I love Queens because it's like the most diverse place in the entire world. You will never see what you see in Queens anywhere else. Where you see, I was like right in the center of like an area where there was like a whole beautiful Hasidic Jewish community, a whole beautiful Afghani community, and then there was like a mix of all Queensite people in that whole region. And I would just be in that whole region walking around, and I saw that there was a market that was not being utilized, which was the uh, Muslim market for chocolates. So I went and bought Eid Mubarak molds from Alibaba, and I was the first one in the country selling Eid Mubarak molded chocolates for Ramadan. And I got a couple of the chocolates into stores. So that was like the first taste of entrepreneurial spirit that I was noticing that I had. And it was really more because I just needed to get out of the house and do something, but it was giving me that little taste and that little, okay, I actually like this. But then I left the area. I left Queens and I no longer was in the middle of my target market. And I just honestly, I just wasn't any more passionate about continuing down that road because I wanted to go back into the workforce and I wanted to build up my leadership skills. And I really thought long and hard about this. And I realized finance, while it was a lucrative field to go into in the first place, and I could have still gone into other financial parts of the field and probably done well. I just didn't want to be in that field. I didn't feel like I felt motivated making other people who already had lots of money richer. It just didn't feel good to me. I wanted to walk away where I felt like I was making a difference in people's lives. So I was just thinking and thinking and thinking. And, my whole family is in the healthcare field. My mom is a BSN, and my godmother is a psychiatrist. My uncle's a social worker. I have so many people in healthcare. So it just seemed like a natural move for me. It had the leadership component and it had the opportunity for growth. And I was giving back to the community and being in a nonprofit sector. So that got me to start in healthcare. But I had to start all the way at the bottom because anytime you change sectors, you're not going to go in where you were. You're going to go in right at the bottom and start all over again from scratch. But because I came in, like we were talking about, with an entrepreneurial mindset, I went in not doing what a lot of people love to do right now, which is that's not my job. Like that job title thing. We're like, I'm not doing that. That's their job. I wouldn't do that. I went in saying, I would like to learn what you're doing, and I would like to learn what you're doing. I'm done with this. I'm ready to learn what's they're doing there. I just could not be doing the same thing every day. I needed to keep changing. And my boss was very, very astute in recognizing that, hmm, she's not getting bored with her work because she's constantly learning other people's things. And eventually I got to the point where I knew the role of everybody in that entire department. And I was starting to realize that this was getting boring for me because there's only so much you can do before you're like, I think I'm ready to lead people. But I didn't have any kind of leadership experience. And they also at the hospital really wanted you to have your master's degree before they moved you into a leadership position. So I was like, all right, fine, I'm gonna go get my master's. And I did. So I went back and I got my MBA. And then soon after that, I moved into a management role. And this is the point, Stephanie, that I feel like I recognized that I had a skill. Now, every organization or every department or every company will always have some individuals who are disengaged. The disengagement doesn't necessarily come from what's happening at work. Sometimes it could be coming from their home life. But if you are not a leader who is paying attention to your people, you will miss this. And then you might overload people with work. You might not be communicating well with them. They may not be communicating well with you. And I started seeing individuals in my department, the few people who are, quote, problems. I'm sure you've heard of this when you go into any company that they'll go, you don't want to go talk to those people. That they're very difficult. Those are the people I was always able to re-engage. I was able, and I'm going to tell you one story in particular. When I moved into one of my more senior roles before I stepped out into my own company, I was reporting directly to the CEO. I had nearly 350 people reporting up to me. I was the main operations person for the organization. So I was leading strategy and I was leading culture change and change management transformation across the board. And one thing that I noticed in that company that was the problem was, for some reason in this clinical facility, the doctors wanted to walk around, and I guess they were trying to encourage them, but it wasn't encouraging. They were being more threatening by saying things like everybody is replaceable. Naturally, that's going to make anybody who's working there feel stressed and not feel like they want to go above it and above and beyond, because if everybody's replaceable, what's the point of even trying, right? So I would walk around and I would try to motivate the teams, and they would say, "Well, the doctors are telling us that everybody's replaceable." And I remember pulling the doctors aside and being like, "Please stop saying that, because that's really not helping the situation." And then I remember one woman in particular. She and another colleague of her, and now these are grown women in their 30s. They were literally bullying their fellow medical assistants on the floor near the patients. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I was sitting in my office and the HR director busts into my office, bang, bang, bang. Angel, we can't take this anymore. I'm just gonna make up a name here to protect her. Karen, she's bullying everybody, and Karen's just, this is always going on. This is, you need to write her up, blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, hold on, I haven't even spoken to Karen. I don't know if Karen even knows who I am. I can't just go write her up. Let me talk to her. I brought her into my office. Okay, this is a grown woman in her 30s. She's got a child who's like 8 years old, and she was bullying a fellow coworker, and that coworker was crying. Okay, I pulled her into my office. I sit her down across from me and I say, "Karen, what's going on? I mean, come on. You and I are both moms. We both have kids about the same age. Why am I hearing that you're bullying somebody? And she just kind of smirked a little, and then she was like, "This place is so stupid." Like, meaning like she doesn't even care about the place, right? And then I was like, "Come on." I was like, "I know you're smart. You've been here for 8 years and you're telling me that this get by through your day, you're just going to make your coworkers cry." And she was just like, "Listen, this place is so dumb." And I was like, "Why do you keep saying that?" She's like, "Do you know how many things are going wrong here?" And she gave me a laundry list of problems, like literally a list of things that directly impacted patient care, that directly impacted our revenue and our bottom line, information that was relevant for leadership to know. And she was like, "This place is stupid because you guys don't fix this, you don't fix this, you don't do this. This could be fixed like this could be fixed like this could be like," and for the first time ever, she had a platform to talk to me, because I was like, "What's going on?" Like, I opened the door for her and she felt comfortable being like, "All right, I'm just telling you this place is dumb and this is why." And then I was like, "Okay, hold on a second. You just gave me so much information. Why haven't you ever thought about coming and telling me this before? Why didn't you tell anybody before? You know how much change we could have done?" She's like, "You just got here. Do you know how many times I've told other people and no one does anything? They look at me and they think I'm stupid because I don't have more than a high school diploma." So, the moral of the story with this one was, you're not going to have individuals who have all of the knowledge base and all of the information behind the scenes to fix your company come forward if you don't treat them with respect and you don't listen to them. And I told her at that point, I said, "All right, listen, Karen." And now we had this job that I needed to give to somebody. And it was, honestly, it wasn't really a big job at the time. It was simply keeping track of the instruments that the doctors were using and making sure that they made it into their sterilization unit. That's all it was. It was just a tracking job. Nothing really complicated, just something simple that had to be done. So I told her, I'm like, "Okay, Karen, I realize that you see a lot and you recognize a lot and you're highly perceptive. I also feel that you are the right person for this really important job that I have. And this is important because, and I explained to her how we were keeping track of all this stuff. I was like, I've been thinking about giving it to somebody who knows exactly what they're doing. And until this moment, I didn't even realize you were this highly aware of the way our workplace is functioning. And I feel like you would be the right person for this. But I can only give this to you if you promise me you stop bullying people. I need you to move into more of a leadership role here. You are going to be doing something that a leader is supposed to be doing, which is tracking things. If you're tracking things and then at the same time you're saying things to your colleagues to put them down, then I'm going to look bad giving you this responsibility. And she's like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. She's like, I was just bored. And, she was just not engaged, right? That was why that happened, right? She's like, I'm not going to do that anymore. When I told her I'm giving her something important, that I'm believing that she can do this without a problem. I believed in her before no one else there was believing her. I mean, I was literally getting the HR director banging on my door to write her up. So I was able to, in that moment, give her the feeling that she was important enough in this company to do a really important job. And she completely turned around Stephanie. After that, I want to say a week later, the HR director came to my office and she said, what did you do when you spoke to her? Did you write her up? And I was like, no, I gave her a job to do. And she took it and she did it. And she's like, well, she's totally changed. I spoke to the other person that she said whatever she said to, and she told me that she went and apologized to her after. I didn't even tell her to do that. She did that herself. So the moral of this story is problem employees often are the ones who are more engaged than you think. Like they're usually upset because there's things that put them off. And the things that they've told to other people have probably fallen on deaf ears and they've just tired of trying, right? If you're able to pull people back in by telling them that you actually care to listen to their thoughts and their opinions, they're more likely to share with you.
Yeah, no, that's a fabulous story. And I have never been in a position where when in the leadership role, sitting down to talk to someone where as I got into the conversation, the true motivations or reasons behind the behaviors, started to reveal themselves. And a lot of times it was coming from a justifiable place. Now, that doesn't mean that it was skillful or appropriate. We talk about that a lot, even in the martial arts, it's not about good or bad. It's just skillful and less skillful. So some people are just not making, everyone's doing the best they can. And sometimes their best isn't good enough. So I'm sure if Karen had been put in this leadership position and then continued to exhibit the same behaviors, the story would have had a very different ending. So, but the point is that you listened to her and you gave her the opportunity, and you also dug into why, because most people are good people. I feel like they want to be good. They
Yes.
just want to be seen and heard. And then when they're
Yes.
not being seen and heard, they start to act out just like any toddler would.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And you know what? That's actually the biggest reason why I decided to go into my building my company, because I recognize we actually have a really amazing opportunity as leaders to build amazingly cohesive teams. I mean, I'm talking about people who are excited to come to work, but you can only be excited to come to work if you have a leader who has integrity, who actually cares about the people, who care about the personal lives of the people. I'm not talking about just the work. Now, I have another story for you. It's not even about me. It's actually about one of my really good friends. This was a model on how you manage a situation that could happen horribly. So she was running her team, and one of her team members, her 10-year-old daughter died suddenly, like out of nowhere. And she went above and beyond as a leader. She not only did she, of course, give her time off and things like that, she physically showed up. She went to her house. She consoled her in those days leading to the funeral. She went to the wake. She went to the funeral. And she was there at a level for her that I don't even see friends sometimes doing for other friends. That is the mark of a true leader. Now, that worker, after she took her days, her grievances day or grieving days off or whatever, bereavement days, she came back with so much gratitude for my girlfriend she was the director of that department. And I remember telling her, I was like, you know, what you did here, you did something really amazing because not many managers are willing to go to that length. You not only were there for her, but you put yourself out there. It's hard for us even for as individuals, it's hard for us to be around things like death and the passing of individuals. She put herself out there. She showed that she genuinely cared about her and her family, and the loyalty that I saw doing that one thing of being there in her worst, lowest moment of her life when she lost her child. The loyalty afterwards was like 1,000 fold. You will never get that again, right? That level of commitment. And like you just said to me, most people want to be feeling like they've been heard and seen, right? And this is something I keep telling people everywhere I go. You don't know if the person that you're working with or talking to, if they're going back to an empty house and they're going back alone. You don't know if you're the only person in that person's life that they're actually having a conversation with that day. You might be the first and last person that talks to them. You don't know if they're going back to a difficult household where there's an abusive relationship happening. Your ability in that moment to make their life better and to make them feel seen and to make them feel like a valuable, important person in someone else's life could maybe be the difference between life or death for that person. You just don't know it. You don't know if smiling at someone can make that change. And that's why when we're in these companies, and whether you're a leader at the top of an organization or even just a manager within a group of just three or four, you're actually in a position where you can affect so much positivity into somebody's life, and they will be so loyal to you and to the work that you don't have to police anybody anymore. They're going to be going above and beyond. They're going to be volunteering for projects because they don't want to lose an amazing boss like you, because they know how valuable that is.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I feel like this is a good bridge into the work that you do now in Star Trek investments, and how you bridge that gap between people and processes. So it sounds like you work a lot with the leadership. That seems to be a big part of the focus. So tell us a little more about the work that you're doing today.
Yes, I do both. I do go into organizations and I do support the employees where I build up different kind of team building workshops, but I also have programs designed specifically for leadership. Being a leader in an organization requires a different type of thought process. It's not simply about getting along with your colleagues. It's about rounding up the troops and getting them to see the vision, to see the goal that the organization needs. And if you're an entrepreneur, it's the same thing that you bring into your organization. You want to make sure that they understand where you're headed, where you are now, and what are the steps you need to get to that next place. So many leaders, they have such great intentions, but they are not effective in communicating that. And when they don't communicate that important vision piece, the visionary idea of how to get there, not just what it is to get to, but what are the steps to take to get there, and what you're willing to do to take them along on that journey and help guide them up. If you're not able to eloquently explain this and showcase this, and showcasing this is also about teaching people about integrity. We can't have leaders coming in, making a promise to somebody, and then failing to deliver on that promise. That's the fastest way to getting disgruntled employees and people leaving and having high turnover. You lose trust with your team, it is so hard to get that back. So my work is really depending on what the problems are in the organization. So if someone was going to approach me and say, Angel, I'd like you to come in. I have an issue with my organization. There seems to be some kind of conflict happening. I can't get my team to work together, whatever. I'll come in, I'll ask a set of questions to figure out what it is that maybe is the direction that we need to take for the solution. And then I'll implement it based on the answers that they're giving me. And with regards to the other part of my business, which is strategic business consulting, I do support entrepreneurs who are starting out their businesses, or they've been in business for a little while and they need support in really taking it to the next level. I offer different types of programs and coaching sessions for that. And coming up, I have a new coaching program. I am super, super, super passionate about helping women. I just feel like that is something that I've always wanted to do. And I'm going to be building this membership platform for women to come together. Most of us as women have been conditioned not to want, like, we have a hard time self promoting. Let's be real here. It's tough. It's just a conditioning in our lives where girls are better to be seen than heard, and culturally it's better to be more quiet and likable than to be aggressive or assertive or whatever. And that's a delicate balance for a lot of women. We don't want to come off as jerks. We certainly cannot sell the same way men can, because we just have a different kind of feminine energy about us. So how do we talk about ourselves in a way that is likable, and but still conveys the message of what we do without coming across as complete jerks, right? That is a very delicate balance that we all need to play, because unfortunately society doesn't really support a very aggressive woman as they do one that's well liked. But you cannot be well liked and effective always. And so how do you get to that balance, right? So that's what I'm planning on focusing on. I have a free masterclass coming up next week on May 2nd for women entrepreneurs who are having this fear of self-promotion, having this fear of public speaking. It's all up in our heads, right? This is all about getting over what's stopping us and blocking us in our brains. And often it's about what we think other people are going to think about us. But the one imparting message I want to leave everybody with, as any woman who's listening here, is it's not about you. It's about getting that message across. You're never going to be able to help anybody that you want to help if you can't eloquently share what you do. And that's why explaining where you're coming from and why you're going in this direction is so important. And that's why I'm doing this class, so that women can get that confidence. We can really root out exactly all those societal things that have been implanted into our heads, just peel that back and just rip the band-aid off and say, all right, we know this exists. We know this is in our heads. It's time to just break free from this and start. And often you just need a little nudge. And truthfully, as women, we need a community of support. It's very difficult for us to be alone trying to do this stuff. You have to be very strong to be able to do it alone. But it's so much better if you have a group of women behind you saying, you can do this. I believe in you. I know you can do it. Not just me. I mean, I'm a great motivator, but imagine having a whole army of women being like, you're awesome. That's just an amazing feeling. And I think that we as women need to do as much as we can to support each other. I've unfortunately been cut down in different different companies as I was going up the ranks by other women. And I think it's because of the scarcity mindset that some women have as they go up the ranks, that there's just not enough room for other women. I wholly disagree with that. The guys are all helping one another. Why aren't we helping each other? So I have always vowed, even though some women did this to me in my career, I vowed I would never do that to another woman, that I will always offer my hand up to pull her up, because we're only going to be able to change the world if we help one another.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very important cause. And it's interesting. So I personally have always kind of been in an entrepreneurial setting. I am very grateful for never having been in a situation where I felt like being a female, it really played any role, even be like coming up through the martial arts. And I've also never been in a corporate environment. So it's always interesting to hear about just the strategies and the challenges, because I just don't have that perspective. And I think it's important. It wasn't long ago I was talking to someone who was doing a men's program. It was kind of like a similar thing, but almost from the other side of where, like, we're just on opposite ends of the spectrum, trying to meet in the middle of how to be good humans and good communicators, where I think men can
Yes.
end up falling into this imposter syndrome of needing to be this hyper masculine image. And then,
Mhm.
women are supposed to be quote unquote, supposed to be more passive, and so now, so we're trying to move towards the middle, and then the men are trying to like calm it down a little bit, just in
Yes, yes.
general, it's 2024. There's not everybody fits into a box, but I think it's important that we recognize those gender differences and the different struggles that everybody's facing.
Oh, totally. I think that what you're talking about what men are dealing with, I mean, truthfully, I feel like men also need support. I just
Hmm.
feel like I want to support women, but I think that men are also dealing with this in society as a whole. I mean, I think they are now, I think you've recognized this too. Masculinity, good masculinity, is being sometimes confused as toxic masculinity, and I don't think that that's good for men either. I think that there is some wonderful things that good masculinity can bring to the table in organizations. Sometimes decisiveness. I mean, in emergency management, you cannot be a slow thinker. You need to be quick. And that is truthfully, males are tend to be quicker with decision making, and they're not as thoughtful about it as women are. That doesn't necessarily mean women can't be great at emergency management. It's just that the way we think is a little different. You just have to train your brain. So when I was working in the hospital, we were all trained to think from the standpoint of emergency management, how to make sure everything is moving at the right place, everybody's communicated to at all the different levels, and everybody has to be in the same exact place for that, right? But it's not necessarily the case when you're having a team, right? You can't just like shoot things to at your team, right? You need to have the team engaged with you. And that's where I think, like you said, we're trying to meet everybody in the middle with this kind of stuff. Women, and the women that I'm serving, are the ones who have literally imposter syndrome, the ones who have everything, like the credentialing, the years of experience, all of the schooling. They look beautiful, they have everything going for them, then something in their head is saying, uh I don't know if I'm good enough for this. I don't know if anyone's going to listen to what I have to say. And why is it that we cut ourselves down so much? It's truthfully social conditioning that we have to undo. And we just have to remember that what we bring to the table is absolutely just as valuable, if not more. In many cases, I think it's more valuable because there's an empathetic nature we offer that is not often in those boardrooms around the world. We're still trying to break into the glass ceiling to get up there in a lot of places. And if we cut down those natural traits that women have, and we don't realize how special and important that is, then women are not going to use it. So I'm going to lean into just telling you quickly about this one specific program. I have a program called really mastering your power skills, which is it's a rebranding of what we call soft skills. Soft skills is problem solving, teamwork, leadership, all of the things that now they're saying is the most important skills you could possibly have. Why? Because we're moving into this digital revolution, this digital renaissance, where we have AI coming and we have to deal with cybersecurity issues, and we're always on Zoom and all these technological devices. We are now at this precipice where that comes so naturally to us is now finally the most important type of skills that organizations need. So, imposter syndrome that breaks us from actually bringing those skills forward, that's just slowing our own growth down. And that's why I'm doing this masterclass for the women. And I'm also building this membership out to support women in getting over that imposter syndrome, getting over that fear of public speaking, getting over that fear of self promotion, and finally learning how to communicate in a way where they feel confident. They don't feel disingenuous. They feel like they have integrity, because the truth is we don't want to have individuals look at us and think, okay, here she goes again. Like, we don't want that. We want people to listen to us and be like, all right, she knows what she's talking about. And the truth is, more times than not, that's exactly what they're saying. She knows what she's talking about. But it's in our head that we're thinking that they're thinking the other thing.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like an awesome program. All right, so I got a couple of friendly fire questions to wrap us up here because I want to make sure that people can find out, how to get involved with these programs if they're interested. But to start, I always like to ask, especially the entrepreneurs that I interview, what should someone look for in someone who does what you do? So if someone's looking to hire a consultant, bring in someone to help with their team collaboration or leadership, what should they look for?
I would be looking for, first of all, I would look to see what kind of experience they have. Have they also been in leadership roles? Have they also had to deal with similar type of problems? Do they understand the business? It's hard for someone to come in and talk about the company problems that might be impacting the individuals in the company if they don't understand the way the company works or the sector, right? So trying to get someone who understands, for example, if you're in the healthcare sector and you want to bring somebody in to talk about patient care, you're not going to want to hire somebody who only worked in the financial field. It's just not going to be the same, right? So making sure that the person understands the field that you're coming into. And then the other thing is, I mean, this is all about engaging with people. So if you don't feel like the person, when you're talking to them, has good engagement, that you are feeling comfortable with them personally, because, even if they don't have the experience, they could have a really great personality type that understands things without having to actually work in the field. So if their personality doesn't seem like that's engaging even on the phone, they're not going to be able to really engage your team. So think about it from that perspective too, because when you're interviewing them, think about it from the standpoint of your group. Are your leaders going to be able to really listen to this person? Or are they, you want some liveliness in the person and you want them to sort of energy. And I'm also, even though I'm going in with workshops and stuff, I'm also a motivational speaker. I'm motivating the staff. I'm actually going in there reminding them, why are you working here? I'm going to tell you why you're working here. I'm going to tell you the amazing things that you, with your daily day-to-day tasks, are accomplishing in the world. And there's absolutely goodness that every company is putting out there, no matter what. You can find it, but it's just about eloquently sharing that. So you want to make sure that the person who's coming in to do this stuff, it's not just about, okay, like, let's just learn how to do some communication skills and stuff. It's about also reminding them to remind your people, why are you here? Because you want them to get excited about coming to work. You want them to be excited about being part of the team. And if they feel like they're making a change in the world for the better, that has to be something that that person can eloquently say to your team. And if they can't do that, I would look for somebody else.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah. All right. So now what's one thing that you would suggest to our listeners that they can apply in their lives today? So from your experience as a leader and everything that you do, what's a recommendation you would make to our listeners?
All right. I'm so happy you asked this question. This is really important. Post COVID, we have lost social skills, a lot of them. And people are very nervous about interacting with other people. A lot of people have been pulled back into the office. A lot of return to work mandates have happened in the workplace, and people are not really happy to be there. Look at your teams. I mean, I'll tell you right now off the bat, there's some problems right off the bat that's happening in companies in New York City, and that I know my girlfriend, she's one of them telling me about this. There's a rule that you have to go into, like, most of the work has been remote, that there's a return to work mandate. There's a rule, you got to go back into the office. You go back into the office, you have to check in, and you got to go sit at a cubicle, random cubicle somewhere, and work all day there. It's it's actually really disengaging for employees right now. I mean, if I could go to every CEO out there and be like, please stop doing this, this is not working, I would say that, because what are these people doing? They're just going in, they're checking in, sitting somewhere and going back, and they're doing the same work they would have done at their house, except now they're adding in a couple of hours of commute time. And how is this actually helping engage your team? I would actually argue, and I know that the employees would probably hate this. I would argue, if you really want to make this worthwhile for them, force everyone to go back in one day a week on the same day. So they're actually seeing each other in person. It's not just big, giant, empty office and there's like one or two people on the floor. So that's kind of like where I would be headed with really talking about remembering where your team is and meeting them where they are. Forcing the hand of people to do things makes them retract more. And the one thing individuals can do today, you're going into the office, talk to your colleagues. Ask them how their day is. Ask them how their weekend is. The social skills part is probably what they're trying to pull back in when they're doing these return to work mandates. If individuals are not willing to actually go out and talk to each other, it's still going to remain the same. So I do believe individuals have to take that effort. You don't know, like I said earlier in this podcast, you don't know if the person who's coming in is going home to an empty house and they're literally talking to nobody. You smiling at them and saying, "You look great today. It's so good to see you." That could be the difference between them going home and like just being depressed or them being like, "Okay, at least I went in today." People need to have that social interaction. I actually saw this TED talk. I can't remember which one it was, but it talked about it very explicitly that to maintain a level of happiness, individuals need to have at least like little small touch points. Like, when you go to the grocery store and you're checking out and you say, "Hey, how are you doing? The weather is so nice today," to the cashier, and the cashier's like, "Yeah, the weather's good. Hope you have a great day." Believe it or not, that little small touch point that you did boosted yourself inside your heart, inside your head. It's good for your whole entire psyche, and it was good for that person's psyche too. That is the kind of interaction, even if it seems like it's not really important, that we need to continue doing because we've lost that ability to socialize naturally. And we got to rebuild that to get back to our community.
That is fabulous advice. It's easy to kind of fall into patterns and not realize how long it's been since you genuinely made eye contact with someone, maybe even a spouse or a child, someone in your household that you're just not giving that little bit of extra attention and full intent behind the maybe you're asking how was your day, but it's while your attention is on cooking or on doing something on your laptop or whatever. So actually taking the time to put all the screens away, make eye contact with the person and have just a 30-second genuine interaction. That's huge.
Yes. Well, you know what you just said, 30 seconds? That's all it takes. Imagine if you spent 1 to 2 minutes not looking at your phone, not looking at your computer, looking only at in the eyes of the other person, using your full body language to nod your head yes while they're talking, and you're totally engaged. I can't tell you how few people are doing this now because of our telephones, our smartphones in our hands. That level of engagement, I'll tell you this. I remember there was this one doctor that I was working with. He had 40 patients in an 8-hour day. He probably had more, maybe up to 60 some days. He had not more than 2 minutes in the room with them, but they loved him when they came out of the room. And I remember asking, what was it that he did that made it's only 2 minutes? Why did they feel so hurt? And he's like, all I do is I make sure I'm looking at them in the eye the entire time, and I'm really listening to them. And then when they say what their pain is, I repeat what it is. And so that's active listening, right? You're repeating what the other person says, you're listening to them, 100% attention is on them. When you do that, that person feels so heard. They feel like they're alive. They feel like they're here, and they feel like someone sees me. That is so amazing. That is a magical feeling for that person, but not only that, it's a magical thing for you. You're doing something amazing for somebody else, and you walk away feeling like you did something good for the world too. So that's why I want everyone to remember that those interactions are so important, and we have to do everything we can to stop this direction we're going in of really isolating ourselves. I don't know if you know about what's happening in Japan. They have and like phones and all kinds of things. There's a huge loneliness epidemic happening over there. And I know that our former surgeon general over here has a loneliness challenge that he's trying to prevent loneliness from happening here in our country because we're headed in that same direction. How do we stop that? As leaders, we have to make that effort to pull our people in.
Awesome. All right. What's the most valuable lesson that you've learned through your entrepreneurial journey so far?
The most important lesson is you can never stop learning. There's always something more to learn. And the moment you feel like you've learned everything, then you're going to fail. So if you're an entrepreneur out there and you're just starting out and then you're like, okay, once I master this, I'm good. No, 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 no. entrepreneurship is a lifelong learning pathway, if you want to put it that way. And we are always learning and we are never stopping that. And if you ever feel like this is too much for me and I can't do it, just that means that you're probably heading into a burnout as an entrepreneur and you need to take a break. So that is my best tip.
Yeah, my partner always says entrepreneurship is a life sentence. It is it is a constant learning and growing experience. So I love that. All right, most important question, how can people connect with you? So if they're interested, if they're listening right when this comes out, they're interested in the workshop that you have coming up in a few days or any of the other programs, how should they get in touch with you?
Okay, there's a couple of ways. You can either go to careerpathangel.com, which is exactly the way it's spelled, Career Path Angel, just like my podcast, or you can go to Star Trak Investments, and that's STAR, and then Trak is not Trek, it's TRAK, trackinvestments.com. Or I'm also highly available on LinkedIn. I'm always looking at that on my phone. So it's just Angel Mary, comma MBA. You can private message me there. And I'm available right now through the summer. I'm taking a lot of appointments for the upcoming year. So if you want to bring me in for the next year, going from the end of 2024 into 2025, now's the time to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'll make sure that those links are in the show notes description. And yeah, thank you for coming and having this chat with me and keep being you. You're doing awesome stuff.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much, Stephanie.